managerial accounting, cost behavior, mixed costs. Now, as we said at the end of the previous video, mixed costs must be separated into their total fixed cost element and their per unit variable cost element. Now, there are many ways of approaching this. Among the methods that are used to separate mixed cost into their fixed and variable elements is the account analysis approach. Now, the way account analysis works is we take a look at the individual accounts in which various types of costs are accumulated, and we identify over time, as production went up, did that total cost increase directly and proportionately within that account, or did it stay the same as activity changed? So we analyze how the costs change within the accounts with the help of the accountant, obviously, and classify the various types of costs that the business incurs as either fixed or variable. Another approach that can be used is the engineering method. And often when products are being developed in the research and development stage, engineers will identify what costs are going to be needed to produce that product, and in that process of doing time and motion studies and various other studies, they will then classify how much materials it should take to make this product, and how much labor time it should take, and how much machinery they need, and then we can extrapolate from that what depreciation on that machinery would be. So we can classify cost as fixed or variable in that context. But what if we've got specific costs like shipping or a copier lease for which, or particularly utilities, where we just get a bill every month, and in that electric bill and that gas bill we know that there's a fixed element and a variable element, but all we get is the total bill. So in that case, we need a different approach to separating the fixed and the variable elements of that particular cost. And for that type of cost, there are three approaches that we can use. One is the scatter graph. And the scatter graph we just picture by drawing graphically how the cost is behaving, and that gives us an idea of whether the cost is truly a linear cost or whether it's a step variable cost where we got these little chunks of costs that are being incurred at different levels of activity, or whether it is primarily a fixed cost, or it's nonlinear at all. Because if the cost is not linear, then it doesn't matter which of the other methods we use. We aren't going to be able to predict that cost using a linear approach. So the scatter graph is very useful in helping us to visualize how cost is behaving over time. And we'll take a look at a scatter graph in just a second. A second method, which is a very simple method, is the high-low method. And we'll illustrate how the high-low method works. The high-low method simply takes, for a period of data, 6 months, a year, the high activity period and the low activity period, and using that solve for the intercept and the slope of a straight line to estimate the fixed and variable portions of the cost. Because it only uses 2 data points, though, the high-low method can be somewhat weak, particularly if the high or the low is what we call an outlier. It's not behaving in the normal pattern that we expect our costs to behave. It's got some data out here somewhere that's going to skew our results. So the high-low method has its weakness in that it only uses 2 data points. To combat that weakness, we have the least squares regression. And least squares regression uses complicated mathematical formulas that incorporate all of the available data for a particular time period and use that to isolate the line, the straight line, that has the smallest amount of error, standard deviation, standard error in the data points around the line. So it mathematically fits the best line that we can use to predict our cost in the future. In the past, the fact that the regression method was so mathematical was a disadvantage. It scared people. But today we can use Excel, and with 3 simple formulas in an Excel spreadsheet, we can do a least squares regression printout that will is so simple anybody, even a non-mathematician, can do it. So some of the disadvantage of the regression method has been overcome with the use of simple spreadsheet software. Now, a big advantage of regression, besides the fact that it incorporates all the data points, is that we also get statistics, goodness of fit measures that come out of that least squares regression mathematical computation. And those statistics can help us to see whether or not what we thought was a straight line, linear behaving mixed cost truly is, or whether or not what we think is causing cost behavior or cost to change in total is actually the true cost driver, what is really causing those costs to change. So we're going to look at each of these methods individually in the next couple of videos.